Good morning. Welcome to Community Voice. I'm your host, Keith Parris. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. Good morning, Debo.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jermaine.
Good morning,
And
sir.
Jermaine, thank you for doing your academic work.
Yes, sir.
And make sure because tomorrow we want to be able to talk in detail about Mr.
Yes.
Jimmy Lee,
Jimmy Lee.
J.T. Taylor.
Yes, sir. We will
Jimmy
have
Lee,
history on
John talking Taylor.
Taylor.
Know your history.
That's it, Doc. You got to know your history.
Boy.
We just started something over here, boy.
Man. So let me do this. As you know, every day we're featuring books and/or books for Black History Month. I think apropos to our conversation today, Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s book, The Black Church. If you have not seen the documentary, get the book. This is an outstanding book. And for those of you who went to the august Francis Parkman Junior High School, one of our former teachers is featured in this book. Dr. Evelyn Higginbottom. There, she's at Harvard. She was my teacher for 2 years at Parkman, and went on to do great things.
Because you had to repeat.
No, I repeated kindergarten.
Oh, I know.
That would be Jerry Goins. But no, she's my health. I think she had health 1 year, and then the next year she was our counselor. And but she was the person I always tell people I read before the Mayflower. That was because Miss Barnett just encouraged us to read, and we used to read Muhammad Speaks. We used to read the Black Panther paper. So I'm telling you, we were conscious at Parkman. So again, great book. Again, if you can get the documentary, outstanding. Talks about the Black church. And I love what he did in the book because it's something that was not covered in the documentary. He does a whole thing on the Holy Spirit. You know, Black folks and the Holy Spirit. But really talk about that, and it's really fascinating. So again, the Black church. This is our story. This is our song. Following my Savior all the day long. And then they also did a gospel tribute. I know Karen Clark Sheard was one of the feature artists that he had. So again, it's here. Debo posted so people can see the Black church. All right. As I said last year, we started a series of conversations called Faith, Justice, Politics, where we had the opportunity to have conversations with faith leaders from our beloved community. My first guest was the Reverend Dr. Richard Shaw. My second guest was student minister William Muhammad. And so we started this year. And so to kick off the year in this Black History Month, we have in studio with us Reverend.
Yes, sir.
Walter Lanier, Esquire, the pastor of the August Progressive Baptist Church. Good morning. Welcome, man.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to be here. Good morning, brothers. Glad to be in the spot.
Yeah, he is an educator. He's an advocate. He's a pastor, husband, father. And so it was just great to be able to have him in this morning. I appreciate you, man, because we made some changes, but I'm glad you were able to accommodate us. As you said, your schedule's a little bit freed up now. So,
Amen. Yeah. And it's good to be here.
Yeah, you said Michelle said that that you look taller. And you said you're not as stooped. And then I thought about what Dr. King said: a man cannot ride your back unless it's bent.
Yep.
Let me do this, and I want to start this off. This guy is one of my heroes in terms of Black clergy. The Reverend Henry McNeil Turner, AME preacher, and in the Voice of Missions in 1898. This is from the book, The Black Church.
Okay, go right ahead with your reading.
All right, appreciate that.
No, I have the book.
No,
on
that's
screen.
I appreciate
so
that.
we're
Thank
coordinated.
you. So we have context. Yep.
There you go.
Every race of people since time began who have attempted to describe their God by words or by paintings or by carvings or by any other form or figure had conveyed the idea that God who made them and shaped their destinies were symbolized in themselves. We do not believe that there is any hope for a race of people who do not believe that they look like God. And then the thing that got him in trouble, he said God is a Negro.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book out there called Dangerous Preaching.
Yes.
Which talks about the prophetic responsibility that particularly Black clergy has as it relates to issues around justice. And so, again, this morning, as we start off the conversation, give us a little bit background on your faith tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first question I'll have is, what does your faith tradition say when it comes to justice?
Cool. I make a long story short. So I didn't grow up in church. You know, I did not. I accepted Christ when I was 27. Dramatic experience. My son, who you usually see with me with my road dog, he was born. He was not expected to live. They said he would die. He would not last the evening. If he lasted the evening, that he would be a vegetable for the rest of his life. He's now 30 years old, loving life, loves God, loves God's people. And so that's when I accepted Christ. So I didn't come up in the church. I didn't come up through the tradition, but my perception of what the church was formed by watching Eyes on the Prize and reading about Dr. King and study. And so I thought that the church was an instrument of justice and power and liberation. And then having accepted Christ in 94 and then later getting licensed and then becoming a pastor, I brought that with me. And so I was surprised when I found out that was not a universal thought, because my framing was, this is the Black church. This is what pastors and preachers do. They get out and push for rights and serve people and love people and speak truth to power.
And in context, you were at the second oldest Black church in the city, Calvary Baptist Church, correct? Yeah. Which has its own historical lineage in this community.
Yeah, I got there in 99, just as Pastor Leary, one of the founders of Micah, so very much a social justice oriented pastor, licensed me into ministry, and then was there for 12 years as an associate minister before going to Progressive.
So when you talk about when we look at both of us being part of the Baptist faith tradition, and it's and I think their headquarters here. During enslavement, there was a split among Baptists. Southern Baptists, or what is now the Southern Baptist Convention, supported enslavement. They were originally the Northern Baptists, which later became the American Baptists, which would be Northern, who were opposed to enslavement.
Right.
And then squeezed in between there is what we would call, just for national, because it was the biggest group, National Baptist.
The National Baptist,
right? Baptist Church.
Yep.
You know, one of the fascinating things, if Christ is universal,
you're so cerebral, man. Don't hit me with too much heavy theology. I only had one cup of coffee. No, I'm just playing. Go ahead.
I got you.
Yeah.
But if Christ is universal, the formation of the Black church had everything to do with not inclusion but exclusion. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yes is the short answer to that. Everything to do with exclusion, and I have, as of late, begun to argue or opine, given how the Black church was formed in America, and that so much of every other church was really anti-Black and pro-slavery, that the most authentic Christianity in the land is the Black church, almost by definition, because of that very formation. They were bodies of Christians, white Christians, who were opposed deeply to Black folks and in support of slavery. And so we were forged and formed in persecution. And that is a Christian distinctive. So that's recent. I'm not saying anything new, but it's something I've been focusing on as of late.
And originally when we came here, you know, I have this have this whole argument about anthropology and this idea that for many of us, we kind of think that for us as descendants of enslaved Africans, that we started 400 years ago, where history is rich. And what I'm saying is that when we came here, we came here with different religious practices and traditions. And it wasn't immediately that we came here that the enslaver thought it was important to expose us to Christianity.
Right. In fact, not at all. And in some places, there was a concern about exposure to Christianity by my read of it, because in the language of Christianity, especially if you look at the Exodus narrative or Jesus, when he came back preaching, he came preaching liberation and freedom. And so there was some concern, not only about us reading, but introducing us to language that would have us think about freedom and that we had rights. And some of that language could be found in the Bible.
And it's interesting when we, because I'm right now, I'm at the point where I'm trying to, and this is my theological journey, is trying to clearly understand, one, what was the message of Christ? What was the message of Jesus? And then when I say Christ, that turns into, again, Church Universal. But prior to Constantine, Jesus, there was a movement there, you know, primarily there in Judea, and it had everything to do with Roman captivity. Not everything, but certainly Roman captivity. And then the unresponsiveness of religious leadership to the needs of folks, that issue of justice. And trying to, but it seems that we've gotten to, and I don't want to talk a lot about myself, but in my younger years, it really was about justice. You know, I was a student of C. Eric Lincoln and James Cone. And it just seemed like it just kind of got into this whole thing where we weren't talking about liberation as much as we were talking about having religious experiences. You know what I mean?
I do.
And now I'm kind of thinking a little bit differently. Not that I understand the importance of worship. I understand the importance of that.
When you just say differently, you're talking, I want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. So it sounds like you're saying like a drift away from liberation and justice and towards the religious or worship experience. Is what
it was more, you know, the catechism that we would do this, you know, Jesus died for our sins. And then that became the focus, as opposed to what Jesus taught. And in many of our churches, we never really, there wasn't this idea of do we have a responsibility? It's what William Augustus Jones said in terms of directing this at clergy. He said we need to understand the difference between our priestly responsibilities, our priestly roles, and our prophetic responsibility. And we got the priestly down, it seems.
Well, it's wow, a couple of thoughts. First, I think this is, again, prefacing it with the fact that I didn't grow up in church, so this is what I'm observing. So it's what I'm observing, and what I think I see is there were some things, some conservative theologies, perhaps in particular the Southern Baptist, and what's become the white evangelical, that, you know, seem to emphasize what happens with the individual. The individual, and less about the collective one. And so that feels like a drift that I've seen as I've watched and learned and listened. Some are hyper focused on, you know, my soul salvation, which is critical and important, but our experience was coming up collectively, and what are we going to do together to survive and to live and to thrive and pray and plan for the future? How will we do this together? That's one distinctive. And then a subtler one, and I think it's particularly being a pastor for 13 years. It's easy. I have an unction towards community, we know that. But if you don't have that natural unction and disposition, it's easy to focus inwardly towards a priestly. You got a body of people. That body of people have needs. You want to make sure that they're met. You want to make sure that they grow, make sure that, they're prosperous, healthy. And so I think it's just easy without some intentionality to become inward focused. I don't even mean prosperity ministry. I'm just taking care of me and my house. And I think that's a thing that can happen without some intentional focus on what's happening on the external.
Dr. King warned us about those three of these dangers. I'll give you the one that materialism.
Yeah.
And that, and you're right, when we try to do our come up, your first responsibility obviously is to make sure that your family is taken care of.
Right.
But there was a drift.
Oh, big.
Yeah, that I think happened. And I'm really be contemporaneous on this one because we began to see it in the 90s.
Sure.
Coming off of civil rights.
Yep.
And here's the reality. Everybody wasn't down with Dr. King.
No, I talk about that often from the pulpit. More people were not.
Yeah,
He's public enemy number one for many.
It's the Elvis syndrome.
Yeah.
Bigger than death.
Yeah.
Than he was in life.
Right.
And then the sanitized sense of what Dr. King was, which is then palatable and is comfortable for folks who, because when we talk about the I Have a Dream speech, well, if you read the substance of that speech, we got to the hooping part. The substance of the speech literally putting people to sleep.
Right.
Yeah, because he had his own way based on, his education. But this idea that we can, I think we're so heaven focused.
Yeah.
That we're no earthly good.
Yeah, I think that is a thing. And I was surprised when I came into the church that the church universal was not more oriented towards things of justice and liberation and social justice, because that's what I thought the church was when I was a kid and watching TV. I read Stride Towards Freedom, which is about the Montgomery bus boycott, and he's there. He's he's 26. He's in leadership, and early on in the chapters, one of the things he talks about with great frustration, it's 1956-ish, is the different elements of apathy of the church. Some folks are fearful, some folks are indifferent, and it's a small body of the collective of churches that move in the Montgomery bus boycott. And so that was educational for me. It's like, oh, okay, it's not actually the masses. It's not even necessarily the majority of the Black churches that were moving in the midst. That was very educational for me, and in a strange way, I don't know if I want to say encouraging, but it helped me to feel better. I was like, oh, this is actually always been an issue. It may be a minority or not a super majority that's moving in the prophetic, that's moving towards justice, that's speaking truth to power, and then that's organizing. And if that's the reality, that's okay.
And one of the things that I found out, well, we'll pick it up after the break.
Okay.
Faith, Justice, Politics. Our guest this morning is Reverend Walter Lanier, the pastor of Progressive Baptist Church, and he has a whole lot of other hats he wears. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Milwaukee, it's that time of year where love is in the air. You know, Valentine's Day is just around the corner. So keep listening because you could win the WNOV Valentine's Day Sweetheart Giveaway. Be the 8th or 9th caller whenever you You'll have a chance to win 2 tickets to see Mr. C.O. Wilson III's play, Bruh Man Needs Love 2, Saturday, March 22nd. How about 2 tickets to the 12th Annual Milwaukee Blues Festival, 2 tickets to the Milwaukee Auto Show, a $100 gift card to Red Crab Seafood Restaurant on Lover's Lane, a 60-minute massage from Sandy Soothing Hands, a Valentine's Day flower bouquet from Carter's Creations, and a box of chocolates. So stay tuned. Your chance to win could be coming soon. Remember, whenever you hear simply be the 8th or 9th caller to qualify to enter WNOV's Valentine Sweetheart Giveaway. The grand prize giveaway will be held Thursday, February 13th, inside Community Voice with Keith Parris.
Harry Kemp, living a legacy of 78 years until 2011, photojournalist Harry Kemp was born on June 10, 1933 in Racine, Wisconsin, and moved to Milwaukee at age 6. Harry graduated from Lincoln High School in 1951 and enlisted into the U.S. Air Force, receiving an honorable discharge in 1955. His professional photojournalism career began in 1970 as a staff photographer at the Milwaukee Courier until 1976, when he joined the Milwaukee Community Journal newspaper staff until 1978. He taught photography for the Milwaukee Public School System from 1972 to 1974 at North Division, Hamilton, and South Division high schools. He later became an independent photojournalist, working with the Milwaukee Courier, the Milwaukee Community Journal, the Milwaukee Times, El Conquistador, Spanish Times, and the Spanish Journal. Harry Kemp, a pioneer of artistic vision. Milwaukee, let's celebrate Black history, our history.
This moment in Black History was brought to you by Milwaukee County Office of Equity. February is Black History Month, and the Milwaukee County Office of Equity joins WNOV in saluting the various and profound ways Black Americans have contributed to this country's success, from the farmers to the pharmacists. Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it who show up each day and help it thrive. During Black History Month and year-round, AARP recognizes the everyday excellence of those who give back to their Wisconsin communities. We believe that when your efforts drive change for the greater good, we all thrive together. Connect with us to learn what AARP is doing locally and how we can make our communities better for all ages. Visit aarp.org/WI. That's aarp.org/WI.
Rev up your engines and mark your calendars, because on February 23rd, Harley-Davidson presents Flat Out Friday at the Pfizer Forum. Get ready for the adrenaline-pumping action of motorcycles racing on a one-of-a-kind track made of Dr. Pepper soda, syrup, and concrete. Over 350 motorcycles of all kinds tearing up the track with custom Harley-Davidson and racers from all over the world. And here's the best part. There's something for everyone. Special classes for women, racers 65 years and older, and yes, even children 4 and up can join in on the fun. Don't miss the heart-pounding 35-lap pro class, where the leader of each lap wins $100. It's part race, part circus, and all thrills. Tickets start at just $20. For sign-up and more information, please visit flatoutfriday.com.
860 AM, 106.5 FM. WNOV, The Voice. your inside community voice on WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM with your host, Keith Parris.
All right, welcome back, and we're inside Faith, Justice, and Politics. Reverend Walter Lanier, as we have this conversation, and certainly I had originally started it right before the election. One of the things that really precipitated even having this level of conversation was I had right here at Perkins, I bumped into a very prominent pastor in the city, and he said, man, sit down. I came over and sat down. He said, what do you think of that Project 2025? I'm like, dude, I don't think much of it. And here's the crazy piece that's happening. It's happening. So, it was like, we need to have this conversation, but certainly asking the question, what should be the role of Black faith traditions when it comes to certainly the subject of justice, and then the intersection that justice has in terms of politics?
Well, one of my favorite texts is from Luke chapter 4:18. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. It's anointed me to preach good news to the poor, recovery of sight to the blind, and to set the captive free. And that's often referred to as Jesus's inaugural
first sermon. Was that his trial sermon?
Right. He got licensed.
His license.
Well, then they took him and tried to throw him off a cliff.
Right.
So there's a lot of teaching in that text. But for me, I got a couple of degrees, but I try to simplify stuff. And then he came back on the scene. This is his inaugural sermon. These are the first words he said to people about the kingdom of God. And that's what he said: good news to the poor. So concerned about the poor, recovery of sight to the blind. So healing, and to set the oppressed free. So breaking of chains. And so that is very justice oriented. There's no skipping over what somebody says as they lay out the blueprint for where they're headed. And so I think it's super important.
In the context of historically what was going on there, because that's taken from Isaiah, right? And in terms of, there was this debate about who's the Messiah,
right?
And the people, and only an oppressed people needed a Messiah, right? If you're free, you don't need.
You're good, you're chilling.
And so that was politically what was happening then. It started with John the Baptist and his following, and even the Sunday school lesson was talking about how John had sent emissaries to Jesus when he was in prison, asking, "Are you the one?"
Yeah.
But then it reminded me of another conversation that you find in John, where Nicodemus went to Jesus at night. And asked, "Are you the one?" Now people go, Nicodemus went to ask Jesus, "What must I do to be saved?" That is not what Nicodemus was there for. That was because they knew Jesus had a following. And he had a massive following.
He did.
And would that turn into, Rome is concerned about it, the church folks are concerned about it, and so then it came down. And I think we saw this guy came in, prominent pastor, and in the Baptist tradition, and he was here. He said, "Is there a religious bookstore?" And I said, "Well, I think Marquette might have some. There's some others there." I said, "But I'm reading this book right now called Zealot." I don't know if you've read that book. Incredible book.
Zealot.
And in Zealot, he talks about the historical Jesus, puts it in context to what was happening at the time. And I was kind of going, like, it was fascinating to me to kind of hear what was going on. And then he said to me, he said, "I don't want to read that book because it demystifies Jesus." And I backed up and I went like, no, I Jesus, as you just cited in your scripture reference, was here for liberation. Man. And to demystify it, in your mind, is you want to take away all of the, and I know, look, we had the catechism. I know what we've been taught on one level. And that gets back to what I was saying earlier, me trying to get to then what was Jesus here for? Now, people say he was here to die for the sins of the world. That's a theological debate that you can have. But the reality is that we still have injustice.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say either or. You know, that
It'd be
for
both.
me, you know, dying for sins, for salvation, forgiveness, redemption, all of those. So we can focus too much on any one thing. If we focus, which we don't do, but if one focuses too much on justice, I don't think that'd be an issue for us. Then one could get away from things spiritual and things inside the house and healing and redemption and reconciliation. If one focuses too much on one's individual salvation, you can forget about other humans. But going back to your main point, and I try to make stuff plain, I can't get away from his inaugural sermon. And I actually preached it after the inauguration of America's 47th president. I said, here, let's compare. Here's inauguration day for Jesus. Here's what Jesus said when he came in preaching. Here's what he's talking about. Here are his values. Here's our principles. And they're about the poor, the oppressed, those who are in need of healing, breaking of chains. And so trying to find the places where we can say, yep, he definitely said that. And we agree upon that. The demystification, I can't. I think the more we learn, the better, because we need to be able to answer people's questions. We can't. And if we don't know, we have to be able to say we don't know.
And the name of the book is Zealot, The Life and Times of Jesus of Nazareth by Reza Aslan.
Okay.
He grew up as a Palestinian Muslim. He became a born-again Christian.
Yeah.
And then he went back to Islam.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. So, you know, the chairman of our political science department at Mount St. Mary's was a Palestinian Christian. And it was real interesting, the dynamics, and certainly what we see going on today there in Palestine, that dynamic tension. Let me ask this question.
Yep.
I heard a pastor. He said he cautioned us on biblical idolatry.
Okay.
And do you think, you know, when we were talking about enslavement, Nat Turner was an itinerant plantation preacher, would go from plantation to plantation.
Yep.
And I don't know if he had even at his disposal the Slave Bible, which is a highly redacted book.
Right.
Any references to full franchise of humanity, any references to justice,
freedom, liberation,
right. It was taken out the book,
right.
Which then made it a very, very, very small book
in
terms of what was actually in the book. Do you think we have put the Bible in a proper context? Now, again, you know, you're trained seminarian, and do you think that, I mean, because the Bible has outside influence in the Black community, and certainly in the Black. And I know when people say that, what do you mean? I'm not minimizing it. I'm just asking, do we get to the point? I had a caller. There's a group of callers out there who are trying to get me in hell, and so look, I don't need your help. But he asked me, he go, preacher, do you believe in the Bible? I said, no, I believe the Bible. I think that there's a difference, because to believe in it is a little bit different. To the point, do you think, and I know that's controversial in terms of where we are in our faith tradition, and I say that because then we don't always do the proper context.
Well, you have the benefit of what a fair number of Christians, including myself, don't have. You went to a Catholic school, catechism. You have, from your young age, you have a level of training and familiarity with texts that I think more Christians than not do not have.
I was Baptist born.
No, hang with me. But you had that too. And so even, you know, let's just talk Baptist for a minute. One of the things about being Baptist, a distinctive, is local autonomy and local control. So you don't have a hierarchical structure saying you must study this or you must study that. And so you'll get differences from Baptist church to Baptist church, whether you're Southern Baptist or National Baptist or Free Will Baptist or American Baptist, different, say, than if you were Kojic and everything was
Or Lutheran.
a Lutheran emanating from a body. And so two, I'm gonna halfway answer your question. When I look at how we traditionally do Sunday school, and it's good and it's excellent and it has some rigor and it introduces us well to the study, to the Bible and some principles. But I've also seen sometimes I've been in Sunday school classrooms where there is, not quite an idolatry, but who knows right and who's got this little footnote correct, and then debates about some things that from a pastoral perspective, how is that serving your faith? How is that helping you to walk out your faith? So for me, that's particularly important. How does that help you to walk out your faith? How does it help you in today's life? And so there are some places where people can, I'll say it this way, idolize knowledge. And so Nat Turner may have not been theologically trained, clearly was not theologically trained, but appears to have been plugged into the Spirit of God and to the context of his circumstance and situation and the need of his people to be free. So he didn't need Greek or Hebrew. He just needed to look at Exodus and see that God heard the cry of his people, and God said, go speak to Pharaoh and tell my people go. And that particular narrative, I don't know if that's the one he used, so I may be taking a little bit of license, was liberating and propelled him into action. And so how does it, this is very pastoral of me, how does this apply to your life today is what one of the core guiding principles of my reading of the text.
I was I saw a little blurb that Dr. Matt King Carter had did, and just an incredible preacher, period.
Yeah.
And he was responding to the Jeremiah Wright controversy, during the Obama's run for president.
Tragic.
And he talked about he was saying if the slave master, and I'm gonna get to the last 2 points he made, he said if the slave master was unsaved, and he was talking about Nat Turner, and he said, and Nat Turner was unsaved, that would be universalism.
Okay.
He said, but if the slave master is unsaved and Nat Turner is saved, that's liberation theology. And he was talking about, even though how he went about it, because which I always think is very interesting, because I always use Michelle in this. I said that there's this beatific thing. Beatific is this idea of heaven, and that our religion was sold on deferred earthly gratification.
Sure.
Because you have a place in heaven where you'll be able to reap the benefits, right? And I said, but Michelle Bryant raised her hand and said, let me ask you a question, Mr. Slave Master. Why don't you have to wait?
Oh, for sure.
And so, we've had this whole deferral of justice because people said you should really be focused on heaven. And if I'm so focused on heaven, I miss that I still live here.
Right.
And I'd have to die, to get to heaven. So, I mean, I think that in terms of, I heard a brother out of Detroit, he said, it ain't God. And I think this was something that that Reverend McNeil was saying, that is how we've been taught about God.
Yeah, no, I strongly agree with that. And that's, there's what book did I? There's some book I have, I can't remember the name, but it talked about two different types of theology, and I'm going to forget the second one. One is embedded theology, and the second is deliberative theology. Embedded means I do have some form of theology. I have some idea about God. I'm going to say something based on my life experience, based on what's been told to me, based on what I observe, based on sitting in church or not. For life, it's come to me, and I'm gonna spit it back out. And then, but second, deliberative, I've had a chance to wrestle with, tease with, toy, reflect on, push, test my faith. Now I've got some more muscle on my faith because I've thought through it. And we're not, let me ease out of church for a minute and just talk about education. Let's talk about, which is not really easing out of church. Let's talk about our current reality where over 50% of the nation has voted for folly, foolishness, evil, corruption, 34-time felon, you know. So you can say a whole bunch of things, but one of the things you can say is no critical thinking taking place, you know, or just indifference. So yeah, what we're taught about God is not always accurate. Go ahead.
Is it okay to question what we've been taught?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's a deep question you asked there. I had an older sister who was in the church. We were in Bible study one evening, and I talked about, I said, yeah, you can question God. Let's rifle through the book. Here.
Jesus,
Jesus, yeah. Or and on the cross. Why is thou forsaken me? So David, everybody, Job. So there's not that, but what she said she had been taught is you don't question God. And I do understand probably what the intention is when somebody is saying that there, know that God's in control, but that ended up being a shackle on her because she had questions and she couldn't answer. She couldn't ask the questions.
Does it go back to white supremacy?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was talking about Reverend Turner's reaction,
mm-hmm.
and so for many of us, the pictures that we had of Jesus was that of a blonde, blue-eyed European.
Yeah.
If you embrace the theology that Jesus was God, then it would then lead us to the fact that God is a white man.
Yeah.
And we don't question, which gets us back to our enslavement.
Yeah.
You don't question the master.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was probably subliminal. People didn't, but that's where it comes down. But you're right. If you read that a lot of response to scriptures were questions.
Yeah.
That people had in terms of being able to, but I only do that to say that we have to go beyond sometimes as adults, that you've been in adult education, that you have to unlearn in order to learn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to hang out in the critical thinking thing because we're not really taught to critically think. Black, white, unless you've gone through some training. I've been blessed to always be a critical thinker, some from nature, some from nurture. Then I went to law school and really honed that skill, but not everybody is a critical thinker. I know you had to experience this because you got a quick mind when you're in school and you had to take in information and regurgitate information, take information, regurgitate information. I remember as a kid, I said, man, this can't be all intelligence is. I just got to say what they said. Is that's not, I mean, that's something, that's a skill, but it's got to be more than that. But we're not taught to critically think. And as a result, we take in a lot of stuff that's not healthy for us.
Yeah, I think in the long run,
Mm-hmm.
it is, and certainly we deal with this when we're dealing with people grieving, right? And the first question people are going to ask is why? And then they ain't asking it to me; they're asking it to God.
Right.
Why? and but that's natural. If Jesus now having to make probably, I would say, if not the most consequential decision in history in Gethsemane to whether or not he would face the agony of the cross, that kind of puts us there where we realize if Jesus questioned, why wouldn't we?
Right. And then even in, like you said, in Gethsemane, he was wrestling. He's like, hey, I don't want to do this. This is rough. And he went 3 times back to pray. It was unsettled. I prefer not to do this. Is there another way? Can I get up out of this? Can you remove this bitter cup? And he wrestled and wrestled and wrestled. Very human experience from the man who was God. Not trying to be overly theological, but very human experience. So Jesus is wrestling with life circumstances and challenges, and that's Jesus. However demystified he might be, then I'm it's okay for me to wrestle. I find some comfort when I see like people messing up a little bit or wrestling or bumping their heads or having doubts. When I look in the New Testament and the disciples, they were with him. They oughta. Well, no, they didn't. They were human. They were trying to figure it out. They were like us. So we have to figure it out too, and that's okay. We don't have to be perfect, have it all figured out. That's not how it's not how none of this works.
You're listening to Community Voice, Faith, Justice, Politics. Reverend Walter Lanier. Caller, I see you. I'm going to grab you right after the break. We'll be right back.
High blood pressure.
NOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM with your host, Keith Parris.
All right, welcome back. And again, we're inside Faith, Justice, Politics. Reverend Walter Lanier. Caller, we thank you for your patience. Welcome to the program. Good morning. Good morning. All right.
Yeah, we were talking about the white Jesus and the black Jesus. This is a resolution that was put out in 1980, annual meeting of the Association of Black Psychologists. I may not read the whole thing, but it says approved 1980 annual meeting. The portrayal of the divine in the images of Caucasian flesh constitutes an oppressive instrument destructive to the self-esteem of Black people throughout the world and is directly destructive to the psychological well-being of Black children. Whereas this association has condemned the negative portrayal of Blacks in media representations in the past, we recognize the portrayal of the divine as Caucasian as the most pervasive assertion of white supremacy. We see such grandiosity on the part of Caucasian people as destructive to themselves and damaging to people who accept white supremacy images as subliminal elements of their religious beliefs. There is a negative psychological impact when the images of the divinity and divine figures are portrayed in Caucasian flesh with Caucasoid features. The Association of Black Psychologists considers such portrayal as being a mechanism which insidiously advocates white supremacy and by implication Black inferiority. The association, as practicing experts in human mental health and functioning, recognizes that the persistent exposure to such images is particularly damaging to immature Black minds. The association recommends, be it resolved, the removal of Caucasoid images of the divinity from public display and from places of worship, particularly in settings where immature Black minds are likely to be exposed. Resolved, the association provides copies of this resolution to national religious bodies, national civil rights organizations, and select religious leaders for the purpose of opening up an educational dialogue for change. So it's 1980 annual meeting of the Association of Black Psychologists.
And pretty much in the keepings of the findings of Dr. Kenneth Clark, when he talked about how we have been so programmed and everybody knows, the sister called in the other day, talked about the experiment where, you had, and for lack of a better term, a black doll and a white doll, and how the Black kids were attracted to the white doll, right, and not the black doll.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, so certainly if it's Jesus and the portrayal of the divine or just the portrayal of images of success, we've made a great, we made great strides from where we were, but those portrayals are very real. And these psychologists were saying this is one of the most debilitating influences on the Black mind.
And again,
and the white mind too.
Yeah, I mean, because it reinforces in that white mind the superiority of white complexion. I was a Metropolitan. This is what I grew up there. So this would have been like maybe 1969, 1970. I know Dr. Kelly was still alive. And there was a Black artist who donated a picture of Black Jesus. And I'm telling you.
Oh, okay.
The Negroes
really
lost their mind. We could not accept.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
I believe it, but
it was, I mean, to the point that it was not embraced.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is the programming of the superiority of a group of people, and even how religion has been used to perpetuate a certain group's superiority and then another group's inferiority.
Right.
And and when you say it comes from God, it's hard for people to push back.
It's hard to fight against. Yeah.
Yeah. When you sit up and say God,
and
people go like, oh man, well, God said it. I tell people, you keep on waiting on white Jesus because white Jesus hasn't showed up yet. But in terms of our deliverance, but that mindset. So we talk about the church, and let me do this. There is no 100%. No group is a monolith. There's
Mhm.
certain things that'll happen that you will see where people will. I guess a great example that we can say just in America, certainly 9/11. When 9/11 happened,
Yeah.
I don't care where you were as an American, good or bad, you felt like you had been attacked as an American. I got that. I know during the civil rights movement, even in the National Baptist Convention, the hostilities between Dr. Martin Luther King and Dr. Joseph Jackson. And it was the approach. And then just a little inside baseball. There's also some preacher stuff going on there because Dr. King did challenge him. He did run for president of the National Baptist Convention, which ended up getting him banished from that group. But the tensions are there. I had a chance to go, Ron and I, we were in Memphis for the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. And one of the things, Dr. King's last speech was delivered at Mason Temple Church of God in Christ. We have a sense sometimes where we kind of go like, and I understand if you just look at Pentecostalism until the 80s, many Pentecostals did not involve themselves in politics or social protest.
Right.
But there was something there that was just so much bigger than our little parochial differences.
Sure.
Understand that those garbage men could have been Church of God in Christ. They could have been AME. They could have been Baptist. But it was something bigger there, the oppression, which was then able to unite them.
Right.
I think the name of the church was Clemens AME Church, that they launched a lot of that. But the fact that the Church of God in Christ, because I think people knew or people had their life experience. And so they saw that justice was more important at that point than maybe some parochial kind of religious, this is silo that we had found ourselves in.
When I preach, I'm always trying to contemporize it a little bit and bring some other culture to the pulpit and vice versa. So I was thinking about Kendrick Lamar's performance at the Super Bowl. And it's generated a lot of, thoughts and controversy. But one of the things that stuck out to me is how long the performance was and the precision of the performance in terms of what they were doing, creating the flag, the signs, the symbols, and what it takes to move effectively, to be organized and coordinated as a unit. That took a lot of coordination. I'm not talking about anything but that right now. And there was, that's what they accomplished. And so when you were saying that, I'm just thinking about the opportunity for the Black church to be coordinated and organized and focused best it could be on one mission, and the fact that is a thing that can happen, but it requires rigor, it requires vision, it requires intentionality, it requires Baptists to be in AME churches and Kojic churches and vice versa. It requires that coming together around common cause and issue. Not 100%, but a critical mass can get it done.
Well, and I always call that, in my low humble estimation, is a Pentecostal moment. Like the day of Pentecost, where you had all these people. They were all Jewish people. That's the thing that people miss. They're all Jewish people, but they came from more microcultural. They're coming from all over the world. What their experiences was, how do you get people on one accord when we know we have some of these differences, a lot of times cultural differences, our life experience, our lived experiences, and how is there a moment that's just bigger than my immediacy, and then how do we move? Montgomery, the Montgomery bus boycott is one of the most successful movements in this country to force change. And the fact that no Black people got on the bus. We had a few years back, I know when Commander McGee was protesting at Beauty Island, right? And people walking around him.
I remember.
So we get to the point that sometimes I'm not the most important thing in the world, though in my mind I am. where we can see that there are things that's important. How important then is it that we sensitize ourselves, and really starting with our children,
Mhm.
that the requirements of justice, and that we should pursue and seek justice?
Critical. I mean, if those, we have to live out, we can't just talk out our values. And you know this, anybody that's got kids or little cousins or nieces or nephews that you watch, and they watch you. And we can't just talk it. We got to have to live it out visibly, so that those who we are with, so our children see it. It's one thing to talk; it's another thing to walk it out, and it's really important. Both my daughters said my wife told me this. I didn't know this, and I don't consider myself what particularly radical. You know, I believe in what I say and say what I do, and don't mind speaking truth to power. Others do it far, way more powerfully than I do, so I don't consider myself out on the spectrum, whatever that means. But both my daughters, I found out recently, they said, well, you know, Daddy, you're the type of black man that white people will kill. I just found that in this past year. My kids are grown. The oldest one is 32. The youngest one is 20, 25, 26. And that kind of, because I don't think of myself that way. But apparently I'm living out enough of a life of pursuing justice and speaking truth to power that they can see my values and my principles. And so that's important for us to, more than we realize. You know, our youth watch us and observe not only what we say but what we do.
So
Yeah.
What is justice to you?
What is justice to me? Justice, what is fair, what is right, what is equitable. Justice is the removing of shackles and restraints, to equal access to resources, fair distribution of resources, fair treatment under the systems of this country, of local governments, people being held accountable for their actions. Those are some of the principles of justice that come to mind.
And so it gets back to when you talked about when Jesus preached that first message,
Mhm.
this message of justice and giving people due. Dr. Shaw, he said in many instances, we have the mercy ministry down,
Mhm.
you know, but he said that, but there's still that prophetic responsibility. And that comes with its own challenges and risk.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, like you said, if you're not going to put yourself out there, you know, I said in Sunday school when they talk about John the Baptist being beheaded, I said, speaking truth to power, you can literally
Yeah.
lose your head, lose your life.
Yeah.
And metaphorically, what that means,
Yeah.
you know, in terms, we talked about Dr. King, and HBO did a great documentary, King in the Wilderness.
Mhm.
You can read Taylor Branch, you
Mhm.
know, when he talks about Pillar of Fire, just what happened at the end and where he was going, because he was moving away now from civil rights to a more human rights
Right.
perspective. And that's where the Poor People's March on Washington,
Mhm.
and then them building the tent city there, to call, and then his opposition to the war,
Yeah. Right.
which many people believe that's what probably precipitated the assassination. More, not that there weren't threats on his life and
Mhm.
prior to that, but there were many people, and he was in a very precarious situation because he had this relationship with Lyndon Johnson,
Mhm.
and he appreciated, you know, I mean, Lyndon Johnson, Abraham Lincoln, when it comes to, you know, descendants of enslaved African
Mhm.
people,
Right.
who did more,
Right.
you know, and so now you have this dynamic tension
Mhm.
that we have a lot of times, where what is my responsibility to speak up
Mhm.
for those who are not heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Several strands. There's a Matthew 25 text. When I was naked, you either clothed or you didn't clothe me. When I was hungry, you either fed or you didn't feed me. When I was sick, you either came to see about me or didn't come to see about me. When I was in prison, you came to see about me or didn't. And then he said, when did we see? Whatever you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me. So that's Jesus speaking a word, and that's a principle about looking out for others.
Ubuntu.
Mm-hmm.
Where it is the humanity, my humanity, connected to your humanity. Yep. And I had opportunity to have a conversation with Bishop Desmond Tutu's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And she's here now. She's an assistant pastor out in California, and she was talking about Ubuntu in his book. Jesus is Not a Christian. He talks about the African concept of Ubuntu, mm-hmm. that how we're linked by our humanity.
Yeah.
And so I asked her, was the story of Samaritan a story of Ubuntu?
Mm-hmm.
And she said yes,
mm-hmm.
because here you had someone who was not necessarily kin,
right,
but who was moved by the suffering,
right,
and the need for assistance, and provided that assistance. And then you had people who you would think the natural kinsperson,
right,
who decided that their indifference to the suffering or their own self-indulgence, that it was more important that they be safe,
right,
as opposed to providing aid.
Going back to that willingness to step outside one's comfort zone for the benefit of another, whether that's charitable giving, whether that's the Samaritan by the side of the road, whether that's speaking truth to power, organizing the Montgomery bus boycott, speaking out against the Vietnam War, talking about lead in the water in Milwaukee, speaking about concerns about MPS and challenges in the educational system. It's stepping outside the comfort zone, and there is risk. Sometimes I think the risk, sometimes people count the cost and plunge ahead. Sometimes the unction is just so great, because sometimes it's that you just can't not do it. I can't. I got to speak up. I can't take this. I got to open my mouth. I can't take what I see, because of my concern for my brothers and sisters, my fellow humans, and what's happening. And that's me. I can't take exploitation. Or ignorance. Those are my two ills. Those will bring me up out of my seat.
It's all right to feel like Jeremiah.
Mm-hmm.
Caller, welcome to the program. Good morning.
Yes, I'd say I'm enjoying this conversation. I really, really am. Particularly the idea that there's no idolatry, no idolatry of the religion. I really like that. But what my question, and if you're going to talk about this later, you can do it on your own time. But I was thinking that, in civil rights, with the civil rights movement and with George Floyd, there was this phenomena where we assumed that we were successful and we were victorious, and then we find ourselves not being successful at all. It's like in sales, where you haven't actually done the work to identify what it is that the client actually wants and what their objections are, and you're writing out the order, and all of a sudden now you get the objections, and it's too late for you to do anything about it. So I'm wondering, have you any comments about this ideal of what does it actually take to have? In other words, it's one thing to talk about what change looks like. It's another thing to talk about the conditions for change. What actually has to happen in order for there to be the kind of justice that you're talking about?
Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. What I appreciate and what we miss, I think, sometimes about the civil rights movement. And again, I was not alive then. I was born in 1967, so I had to read about it. But from all the reading, is there was a detailed organizing that was taking place. People were principled, disciplined, argued, fight, worked on the agenda, identified what they wanted to get, identified their approach, their strategy. And if you look at modern organizing, if you look at an organization like a Souls to the Polls or a Common Ground or a MICA, the best of those organizations, they have a strategic framework by which they identify issues, they asset map power, and they say, here are the strategies and tactics we're going to take to agitate, to push, to cajole, to ask, to make a demand, and here are the outcomes that we want. And that's some of the best of the civil rights movement. It is strategic, it is chess, and it's not checkers. If we go back and look during the civil rights movement, there was a whole lot of planning and strategy. So that's kind of point one to answer your question. And then the other way I would answer it, and it goes back to a comment Keith made earlier about Jesus. Often in the New Testament, they were trying to kill Jesus from jump. So in Luke chapter 4, after he preached his inaugural sermon, the second half of the sermon ticked them off, so much so because he told them about themselves that they took him and they wanted to throw him off a cliff, but he eased, because he was Jesus, eased through the crowd. But they were ready to kill him then. So the New Testament, the Gospels, they're always striving to kill Jesus. And often what you read is that people were ticked off. They were mad because the crowds were going his way. They felt some type of way about their power, but they were fearful of the crowd. The powers that be were often fearful of the crowd. And so in our community, as we organize and mobilize effectively, if we can organize critical masses, then we have more power. That's one of the things I see in the gospel on a regular basis. Oh, they're scared. You can take out one individual, but a crowd is intimidating.
Well, and I think the other thing is you talked about from the Getty up, I think even before he was born.
Yeah.
Really? Because they were out basically doing a genocide. In terms of male children.
Yeah.
Killed the seed had been done before by the Egyptians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Killed the seed.
Mm-hmm.
In the
let me just say we're still here. I since it's Black History Month, I just want to push that in spite of all the killing, murdering, lynching, raping, destroying, miseducation. We still here. We still Black. We still fighting. We're still making a difference. I just wanted to.
And then
I felt compelled to say that.
Have you seen the Book of Clarence?
Yes.
And even when he was going like, dude, I'm just out here on the hustle. And the Roman guy said, you might be, but I can't trust you. I don't know. You got to follow it, right?
Yeah, that's real.
But he said, I'm going to give it to caller. So think about something that the caller asked.
Yeah.
Change.
Because
that stood out to me.
Yeah.
And I asked the question during George Floyd, is this a movement or is this a moment?
Yeah.
And what does change look like? I'll get the caller and then we can. Caller, welcome to the program.
Good morning. What I wanted to say is, I think where we are today, no religion should be used in any type of politics, because for some people who are codependent thinkers, it comes with a lot of baggage. And we know for a lot of codependent thinkers, it puts them in a mind of fear. So fear is used to keep them thinking a certain way or voting another way. I feel true justice and true equality is to have the right, is when they go low, I should have the right to use and open the devil's door. Because the devil does not care. And I tell people all the time, the devil can be good when you know how to use them. Because, see, the devil don't care. And the people who's out here doing devil stuff, they don't expect for you to use it in return. So that's true equality, which means if you step on my foot, I should have a right to hit you in your other foot with a sledgehammer. If you slap me in my right cheek, I should have a right to go through your left cheek with a screwdriver. It's talking about true equality. And I also think when it comes to Columbus Day, we should rename it Disease Day, because that's where it all started, from him raping children and feeding them to the animals, to molesting to dogs, because the dogs was never right after that night. And once we have a true meaning of that, then we can move forward. Another thing they always bring up is transgenders. And I feel like it's a closet way of them saying they want to mess with a transvestite and some bulldaggers. Because who gets up in the morning thinking about it? But then again, religion is used to keep people in fear. And when you remove that, people will see their true power. Have a great day.
I can lean into some of that. A couple things on that. I can segue. Religion should not predominate politics. In other words, we're not in a theocracy, we're a democracy. I agree with that one too.
But,
You know,
but is there a difference? Aristotle says that man is a political animal. What we
Yeah,
do
yeah,
is politics.
yeah.
So maybe you're talking about, and that was one of the questions I had
Okay.
about this idea of partisan
Yeah.
politics, but the mechanism to force change is political, right?
Yeah. Yes. I when I say there should not be a national religion.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
I agree with that.
And I should not impose my religious views on the nation politically too. Should people who are religious be involved in politics? You are, whether you want to or not. You're involved in politics every single day with taxes you pay, fines you pay, where you go get your driver's license, zoning ordinances, licensing ordinances, dealing with city hall, dealing with the state, dealing with the Department of Revenue. You're dealing with taxes in government every single day. One of the definitions of politics that I learned, I don't know, some time ago, was the distribution of scarce resources. Who gets what? So because one is religious, they should not remove themselves from that conversation. They should inform that conversation. So we definitely need to be involved. In a third thing is the king and the merchant and the church are sometimes in tension. Politics, business, and faith. Historically, those are things that have been three different power centers, and they can get out of whack. So the best of faith in religion and politics is to lift up some moral principle that might be in opposition, like the civil rights movement. We're in opposition to what the law is doing right now. We're in opposition to slavery. We're in opposition to what the law says about civil rights for Black folks. We think that is unjust according to our scriptures and text, and need to speak that up to shift what's going on in the politics of the time.
I think also, this is key.
Yeah.
I think it's also a misapplication of Matthew 27. Is that where the Great Commission is, and how the Great Commission was used for colonization, subjugation.
Oh yeah, fair.
You know what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
that force, and then even we saw there's a great
28, Matthew 28. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There is a great documentary on the papacy.
Mm-hmm.
And it really talks about what you just talked about,
Mm-hmm.
that intertwining, because really the person who is what we look as Christianity today
Mm-hmm.
was a political leader, Constantine.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was, and how during the Crusades,
Mm-hmm.
when they had decided, Pope Leo, for a lot of reasons, to go in and take back the Holy Land.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done, under the auspices of the cross and the church. Christopher Columbus, part of his commissioning was not just Queen Isabel, but it was also the Catholic Church. And so that idea of how we go in and then we use religion, Africans say that the Christians brought us the Bibles,
Right.
and we kept the Bibles and they got the land.
They got the land, yeah.
And so that in my mind, when we're out, and the whole conversion piece, and it's not even close to where the early conversion, or when the missionary journeys of the early apostles was very different than when we're talking about where people are going in. And that kind of gets us back. There are people out who make the argument America was founded on Christianity. That is not even historically true. Most of those men were deists at best,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you look at the Jeffersonian Bible, he takes all references to God out of the Bible,
right?
Out of that particular version, his translation of the Bible. So I think people do that, but in my mind, it just perpetuates white supremacy to say that European created religion then should be the religion of the land, where, and now we probably live in America is probably more multi-religious than certainly was when I was a kid.
Yeah. And it was challenging, but that's what it was. Well,
Right.
In
And then
theory, that's what it is supposed to be. I can't even say was.
Yep. All right. Faith, justice, politics. The Reverend Walter Lanier. Man, you blowing up the phones, man. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The passing of a loved one is emotional enough without adding the stress of funeral arrangements. By pre-planning, you receive the desires of your heart while taking away the burden from your family. It also saves you money, providing the dignity and respect your memory deserves. And there are times when life ends unexpectedly. Please know that the New Pitts Mortuary is here to lend a helping, caring hand anytime, day or night. We are the New
inside Community Voice on WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM with your host, Keith Parris.
All right, welcome back. And caller, we thank you for your patience. Welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning to you, gentlemen. I wanted to call in earlier. You was talking about the heaven here on earth, and you want your heaven on earth, stuff like that. I wasn't able to call because I was in the middle of something. And how you doing, Mr. Scholar? You got a scholar on deck with you this morning, brother Keith?
I'm doing well, man. How you?
Yeah, I'm blessed, big brother. I'm blessed. Listen, you know what I don't understand and what I don't get is that I hear you and the gentleman discussing Christianity, the very Christianity that was probably given to you and me and given to my granddaddy, my daddy, and the rest of us, probably given to us at birth. And when I hear, what I hear is that you're attacking the very thing that you say you stand for. And it bothers me because it really bothers me because I never see a Muslim talking about, and I'm talking about the Arab Muslims, never talking about how they were detrimental in the slave trade themselves. I see the South Africans never talking about how they played a great part in apartheid in their government. I never hear these people doing, but what I hear in us, black men, and what we've done is we've infused the militant movement from the late 50s and 60s all the way up to the early 70s, militant. We've infused their voice, which I never seen them lead a real march. I've seen them do a lot of talking with void threats. These things, we've infused that with our religion. Now we weaken our religion because we study talking about what the white man has done. But if you really study it, you'll see that the white man has actually hijacked our religion. The roots of that same Christianity that you guys are discussing came from us, me and you. So I don't have to worry about it. It just bothers me because I can hear you, and I'm like, why are you attacking what you claim to stand for? And the reason why we do these marches and we get out of, we study protest and all of that, because when we get to the city halls all around the country, or when we get to the capitals around these countries, we've got no representation to carry it inside and sit at the table. So me and you can do a big march and get 20,000 people tonight all around City Hall. If we don't have anybody at the table for us to negotiate these things, it's just a void convoy. It's good for nothing. It's like marching from here to D.C. And when we get there, we got no representation to take our agenda to the table. You understand? So I want to ask the preacher, why would you, and then I heard Keith talking about heaven on earth. Well, if you look in the Old Testament, it never mentions one word about heaven. You never see the word heaven in the Old Testament. Never, not one time. Just like you just don't see it. You see Shemaiah, which means the sky, but you never hear them talking about heaven in the Old Testament. So they were looking for some action here on earth, if you rightly divide that. But listen, man, I just had to ask that question. I'm sure your audience wants to know, why would us preachers get on here and constantly want to talk about Christianity? I don't see no other people doing it. I don't see no Muslims getting here talking about the Quran, tearing it down. And they played a good part in our demise. Especially, they still doing it right. They still doing it right now. So my question is, why are we on here discussing tearing down our stuff? Why are we challenging it?
I think Jesus, if I real quick, I think Jesus did a critique on the religious leadership and religious authority during his time. A critique of the situation is then hopefully moving you to a point where you can do better by the situation. So when you talk about it, that to have that type of critical conversation is, I don't think it's dismissive. It's just saying that maybe there's some parts of this that might be challenging, and that we have a responsibility, because I think that religion is fluid, is not stagnant. And so there are constant things that we're doing as we evolve, as our understanding evolves, that, again, and we get back to asking questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions.
But you're right. There's no problem as long as we're asking them amongst ourselves. When we take it to the public square and we start to talk about this, then we create doubt in the very people that we want to believe what we're supposed to know. Ain't supposed to be no question. We're supposed to know beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that what we're talking about is fact. And if it ain't fact, we done taught it so long that it becomes fact amongst us. Me and you having this discussion, and we chopping it up, fine. But when we take it to the public square and discuss it, we create doubt. I just heard a brother called in right now, and he claimed to be an atheist, but he put so much emphasis on the devil. Now, you can't be an atheist and believe in the devil. So, I mean, when I hear these things contradictory, things that are contradictory, and then I don't see a brother stand up and say, hold on, that ain't how that go. This is how this go. That means you're big. It's like the big giant going out defying the God of Israel every morning, and all of a sudden the little shepherd boy come out and say, hold on, I'm gonna handle this situation. And guess what? Nobody never handles the giant. The giant keeps coming out defying the God of Israel. Okay, and regardless of what the Zionists are doing over there right now, I still believe in the geographical location of where my Christianity started from. And it won't be wavered. I'm not going to infuse it with any militant talk that has been basically born. I didn't see them get one law changed, and including the black Muslims. I never seen them get one law change. Never seen them really have a real effective march. Malcolm did it. James Baldwin said in his book, Malcolm did it and got some heads crashed down in Harlem, and he was on the other corner. He didn't participate in the actual deal itself. So I've never seen them do anything, but I've seen a lot of void threats, and that's what we did wrong. And it's all over the internet, and black man just handling it like this and not getting to the table to clear deals, and that's where we at, man. I'm gonna get off the phone. I would really like to have sat in there with y'all one day, one Thursday, whatever day y'all got this going on. And y'all can whip me. I don't mind being whooped up. Put on 2 pair of pants for y'all, you know. So anyway, listen, man, let me get out of here. But that's my question. Why are we challenging what we supposed to believe in and know it's fact now because we believed it so long? So check this out. Why are we challenging it on an open thing? This is what you scholars, we sit down, we chop it up, and we might walk away scratching our head like Keith said something. But I got to get out of here, man. I'm gonna get out of here.
Yeah, great question. I'm not clear that. I think maybe the listener was mishearing what we were saying. The conversation has been about faith, justice, and politics, and what our role is in politics. And we have not diminished the faith at all, but actually talked about the strength of the faith and the need for it to be more public and more visible. I don't know if he's speaking of modern time, but when we talk, for example, about the Montgomery bus boycott, that was not only significant in Montgomery, not only significant nationally, but it had global impact. It had a transformational effort to watch this body of people boycott the bus for 380 some odd days. It was transformational globally, and that was some of the best of the church living out values of justice and principles like that. Similarly, in the civil rights movement, emanating out of the Black church, with Dr. King and many other leaders, male and female, some of the best human rights work on the planet that took place. Took a lot of suffering, a lot of persecution, which is a profound Christian principle. And on the other side of that, contrary to what the caller said, there was impact. Now, there was suffering, but you had civil rights acts that were put into place, voting rights acts that were put into place, I was not quite following what he was saying, unless he was saying that we're not doing that effectively in modern times. But that has been consistent. And so I stand on my faith and its power to be liberatory and justice provoking and reconciling and healing and serving and community building. So I would have to hear back from the brother. I think he was hearing perhaps what was not being said. And then in terms, let me just say this last piece, in terms of evaluating and critiquing and analyzing and learning and growing, we'll always do. The Bible in part is an apologetic, meaning it's in response to what was happening sometimes inside a body and a community. But I don't, this is far from a tearing down.
Yeah. And I think that truth is truth, man. I mean, that is Jesus said that you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. So sometimes I thought about something I heard many, many years ago where it says that revolution is a change of mind. The brother talked about change, even how you think about a thing, right? How you view a thing. Even Christian conversion is how you, and being very simplistic, how you view sin and how you view virtue, where virtue becomes more desirable than sin, right? That's a change. That's a mindset. And so a lot of times it is just how we think about it. And then how we think is then going to probably compel us to some form of action. Caller, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Okay, let me turn this down. Good morning, and thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
The kids are out of school today, and I'm hoping that some of them are listening. And it makes a difference what we're saying. And I like when they call in, have a point to make. And my point is this, very briefly. Parents, teach your children. Don't leave it up to the school system. Don't leave it all up to the church. Teach them that God is a spirit. And because you see a white Jesus, it should not make you feel less than or anything else, because you know that you live in a society, and that dominating society is going to put themselves ahead of anything and put you down. But as long as you have a strong belief in who you are and that you have a purpose and a reason to be here, that's what you need to be armed with. All this going back in history and all this here kind of stuff, you're going to be around people that look like you, that don't look like you, but you pursue the endeavors that you have and don't let no one turn you away from those things. And even in church, it is important that we teach that God is a spirit. And you think everybody, the Japanese, all the nationalities see Jesus in their own portrait. And you teach your kids, there are two things that people believe, either in creation or evolution. You teach them the one that your faith is taught us, and that is in creation. But when you go to these institutions, it's going to be evolution. But there is a system that has things running, and man didn't do that. And I'm going to tell you the next thing. Watch closely. Donald Trump is there for a reason, showing people who goes in and dismiss a whole operation without finding out or closing out things. That shows no intelligence. And to just get rid of jobs, and now they're saying, this is what the American people want. You are not speaking for me, because it's not intelligent. And Elon Musk is playing Trump like the bee on the street. Okay? He's getting out of it what he wants. And when Donald thinks he's moving, messing with him, oh no. So I think Elon Musk is really the president, and Trump is listening to him. And that's just my take on all of it. And children, please have a mind of your own. Don't let a loudmouth or a person want to beat you down with a whole bunch of dead facts that they have that you don't understand. Deal with what you understand. Thank you for listening to me, and have a great day.
Okay, and let me just put on this little hat. Creation is a belief. Evolution is science. Caller, welcome to the program.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. Assalamu alaikum to you all. I just trip when I hear literal beings make God something that is super fantastic, unimaginable. It's crazy to me. There's literal snow that was water transformed into snowflakes that is falling from the sky. But some people are so crazy that they probably think the snow is a spirit. But that's not why I really call it. Because sometimes, as the Holy Quran says, that there are those that Allah corrects, and there are those that Allah leaves in confusion. So when a person says something like, one of the callers said that if you said something so long or so many times, you believe it and it becomes fact. And if that is the case, then it must be true that Black people must be inferior, because that has been the prevailing and predominant attitude, mentality, and the way that we have been dealt with throughout the entirety of the world, and primarily here in America. So if you have someone say to me that just because you are repetitive in your utterance of something that is absolutely asinine on its face, I am to accept it as fact, and you cannot prove it one way or the other. I mean, we are taught in the Nation of Islam to think 5 or 7 times before we speak. When you think, you give yourself a time to process and to calculate and to determine what it is you might want to say. Just because you are emotionally inflexible, or you're emotionally perturbed, I should say, you say whatever comes to your pea brain, and you think that it is factual because you have a telephone, and then you are answered on the other end, and you give the tomfoolery broadcast. Just because you say, you can go outside right now and stand there until a storm has passed and tell everyone that walks past you, that's smoke falling from the sky. But they're going to think that you are a complete and total fool, because they're going to be like, how the hell is this smoke? When it touches me, it feels cold and it turns into water. Come on, man. Mr. Meach, there ain't nothing you can say to me that will convince me otherwise, because every time you speak, I hear nothing but gibberish, and it sounds like the utterances of a freaking retarded person.
I appreciate you. He did say something, though. Saying it so don't make it so.
Oh, for sure.
But he's right, and I just loved his logic. If that's the case, it's been said that Black people are inferior. So if we say it long enough, does that make it true? And I thought that was a bit of profundity. I appreciate that, but it is, and that's why I'm saying in terms of how we describe ourselves, and it gets back to Reverend Turner, where if we're doing where we create God in His image for our understanding, and if everybody else does it, then his question is, then why can't God be a Negro? I understand what he's saying tongue in cheek.
Sure.
In terms of that the what is that called, the iconograph that we have, where look, we're trying to understand God, and that's in my mind a futile exercise. We're going to do what you do, and so we try to do it, and the best way we can understand God is put God in human terms, right? But when we think about it in existence, humans we're infinitesimal in human existence. I mean, in existence, period. So I think a lot of that is just we always looking from a human-centric kind of perspective, trying to understand it. But that was a great point, Christopher.
I just want to ask you this real quick. So since we are created in His image, and God created all mankind, is it fair to say that God is Black, He's Chinese, He's Puerto Rican, He's white, He's Mexican? No.
I mean, it's fair. I mean, I don't know if that's true.
Well,
but again, I think it's I said it earlier, it's how we've been taught about God. Mm-hmm. And so for human beings, and Brother Lanier had said this earlier, you go from where it is so our Christianity is so self-centered, right? And how do you expand it where Jesus talked about how we go beyond ourselves to make sure that justice is done.
Yeah.
And but that's very difficult because it kind of pushes up. I said I hope that religion modifies behavior where I can become a better person.
Yeah.
And how am I the best person? The last caller.
Well, when you're putting that color on, also, God is a spirit, and then you look at Jesus and where Jesus was born, where Jesus resided, where he went to hide, what continent he was on, and we don't know for sure exactly how he looked, but blonde-haired, blue-eyed, not,
Well, the scripture says
he would have stood out in Egypt.
Skin was made of brown.
Yeah,
the hair
right,
wool,
right.
So that's pretty much telling you.
I agree.
Call it real quickly. I got like 1 minute. Good morning.
Yes, one thing I want to say that we have a tendency to idealize the past. I was the daughter of a minister who was also a civil rights activist, and some of the things that were experienced were there were some people that did agree with him, some ministers that did, and some that didn't. And the last thing just had to do with removing the images of God or attempting to portray God. I think we don't give Imam W.D. Muhammad enough credit because that was one of the things he did in the 1978 and so. And Naim Akbar, Dr. Naim Akbar, who was a psychologist that you mentioned, and he was a part of that movement also. And then he was able to take those ideas to the organization. So anyway, I can call in a little bit more on a different day on those stuff. Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you. Anything in closing?
I'm gonna leave with a scripture because we're talking about faith, justice, and politics. So one of my favorites is from Isaiah 58. It says, "Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and to not turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will break forth like the dawn and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call and the Lord will answer and you will cry for help and he will say, here am I. If we do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk, if we spend ourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs. In a sun-scorched land, you will strengthen your frame. Your people will be called repairers of the breach, restorers of the streets with dwellings. And so I see in that text from Isaiah 58, faith, social justice, and politics in a call to be a liberating force for our brothers and sisters in community.
Preacher! I appreciate you, man. Reverend Walter Lanier of the Progressive Baptist Church. Debo, thank you, man. Jermaine, thank you, man. I know you had to hold it in. Hey, the good Lord willing, quick don't rise. Hope to talk to everybody tomorrow. And as always, go from this place in peace.
Hey, Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about some new COVID